Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والعاقبة المتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا وشفيعنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم لا علم إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وزدنا علما. Alhamdulillah. Again, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for gathering us here to learn about this immense topic, this topic of da'wah and calling people to Islam. To begin with, I want to mention about the broadness and the vastness of this topic. That as callers to Allah, essentially we're calling everybody around us. This is a point that maybe hasn't been emphasized, but our first and primary concern is those people immediate to us, which is our family, our children, our spouses, our parents, and then our more extended family, our aunties and uncles and cousins, and then beyond that towards the wider community. And we have this sense of prioritization. So da'wah is a role that's played and is really carried out by and fulfilled by everybody. One of the important aspects of da'wah is that we take whatever means we can and we do things to the utmost of our ability. One of the things that Sheikh Umar Hussain al-Khatibi mentioned, that if you're in a situation where you want to call people to Islam and you go to the masajid, for example, but you're not able to find an audience at the mosques, then you go to a community center and you try to organize an event, then you can't do that. Then you start inviting people to your house. Come to my house and I'll teach you about Islam, or we'll do Vicar, or we'll do some type of activities together, and you can't even do that. Like this time now, we can't even do that. Then you try every means, even if there's no means open to you. You try all of these different things, none of them work. Then finally, what's the last thing that we do is we close our doors and then we turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah to give us sincerity and to give us opportunities to call other people to Allah. In other words, every single situation in our lives, no matter where we are, what we're doing, we have an opportunity to call to Allah. So the key point really is for us to be sincere and us to be absolutely utmost in our desire. Yeah, to take every means possible to call people to Islam. Yeah, we have to understand that this is a task that requires the utmost himmah. I mean, we look at the examples of our forebearers. Look at the likes of the Siddiq, Anwar. Look at Imam Abu Bakr as-Siddiq just after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, and he becomes the Khalifa, he becomes the leader of the Muslims. And there were Muslims at the time who were refusing to pay zakah. Yeah, they weren't paying their zakah. They weren't paying what was obligatory upon them. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq said, we have to prevent this. We have to prevent this mutiny, and we have to declare war on these people in order to bring in the rightful due of Islam, the rightful due that is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for people's wealth. And his advisors around him said, this is very difficult. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Khalifatul Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is very difficult because in Madinatul Munawwara right now, there's a lot of problems around us. So we can't really go out. How can we send an army out when we've got internal problems? Abu Bakr as-Siddiq's response was uncompromising. He said, I will go out and meet them by myself. I'll go out and I'll meet the whole army by myself, but there's going to be nothing. I'm not going to stand by whilst the deen of Allah is somewhat lowered, whilst the izzah, the power and the might that Islam has becomes denigrated or lowered. I will never stand by. And Umar ibn al-Khattab saw this, he saw his seriousness. And we should have no doubts, if Abu Bakr as-Siddiq had gone out to meet that army alone, he would have defeated that army. No doubts whatsoever, he would have defeated that army alone. This is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He would have had the ability and he would have been able to defeat that army alone. Because this was his sidq, this was his profound connection with Allah. So we have this, we call upon Allah in any state and in every situation we can think of. I mentioned once there was a group of students who had been studying at Dar al-Mustafa in Tanim, and they were going to leave, they were going to go back to their countries to spread Islam. So they had a meeting with our teacher, Habib Umar, and he asked them, he said, what are your intentions for going back? What are your plans? What are your goals, your aims, your objectives? What do you want to achieve when you go back? So they said different things. One of them said, I want to teach a few classes in my area. Another said, I want to, engage with young people, different things. And after they finished, Habib Muhammad said that we need to increase our himmah. This is very low himmah. We should be saying, I want to go back and I want to transform a whole country. Yeah, I want everybody in my country to become impacted and transformed by my work. Why? Because this is God's work, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's work. So therefore, when we come forward as representatives and trying to do that work, we have to recognize where the assistance is coming from. It's coming from Allah. So therefore, the possibilities have opened up. Yeah, anything and everything is possible. But the key point is for us to be committed. The real barrier, the real preventative barrier that stops people from calling others to Islam, that stops us from transforming our own families even. Why is it that we can't transform our own children, our own spouses, our own parents, our own brothers and sisters? Why is it that we can't impact and change their lives? The reason is the nafs, and it's the laziness of the nafs. It's the barrier that the nafs places that we can't overcome, that we can't hurdle past, that we can't go through. So because of this, we really, really do fail in our duty. But if that was removed, then mashallah, anything is possible. Okay, if you continue on then with this book, this blessed book, last week we were talking about tadhkir and the importance of reminding, and we were also talking about speech, yeah, and the importance of being the caller to God, being able to speak correctly. So what we would say that it's important to know how to speak, but it's equally important, if not more important, to know when to speak. When should we speak and when should we not speak? So if we look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was silent by nature. The vast majority of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life with people, with interactions with people, he was actually silent. Silence is profound. They say it's 9/10 of wisdom. 90% of wisdom is in silence. Yeah. So we have to know when to speak, how to speak. When are the opportunities? When is speech going to be effective? Yeah, we saw with one of our teachers, Habib Qadir al-Saqaf, he was at the Trodden Path. They have a retreat called the Trodden Path in Wales. And he was walking and he met like a non-Muslim, an elderly gentleman, a non-Muslim. And he stopped with him and he spoke with him for a long time through an interpreter. He talked about Islam. He explained some of the wisdoms of Islam to him. And then he gave him a gift. He gave him a copy of the seerah that's been done by Martin Lings, rahmatullah alayhi, which is a really amazing seerah. Many of our teachers say it's probably the best book to recommend. If you're going to give a book to a non-Muslim about Islam, then this seerah, because it's been written to a beautiful standard, like in terms of the English language, and also the topic, of course, what's being discussed is immense as well. So he did this, and then after he'd finished his conversation, the students around him were somewhat perplexed. They were like, yeah, Habib, we've seen there's loads of non-Muslims that come through this. But we meet non-Muslims in this village all the time. But why did you stop and speak with him for 5-10 minutes? Why didn't you stop and speak with the one yesterday or the one the week before, etc.? And he said that every individual, when the man of basira, when the people of inner sight, when the people of purification, when the people of true da'wah, true calling to God, when they gaze upon people, it said that you see a light, you see a nur that comes from them that connects up to the heavens. And that nur tells you about the strength of this person's connection to Allah. So he said, with this individual, I saw that this nur was strong and that he was very close to accepting Islam. He was very close to accepting the natural, the primordial, the most beautiful and perfect way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought down for us. He was close to accepting this universal, this magnificent, this authentic way, this way of sincerity, this way of elevation. He was close to accepting it, so I gave him that time. And you see the difference here. So he's seeing this, and then this is the time to speak. Other occasions, maybe it isn't the time to speak, because like there's no point in speaking to someone if you're just going to upset them more. You're going to get into an argument. And it's not going to have an impact. If it's not going to have an impact, don't speak to them. Speak to Allah. Ask Allah to guide that person. Don't expend your energy in something that isn't effective. Yeah. So we combine means, but we use them at the right times, in the right way, and in the right place. Yeah. And this is one thing we have to recognize also when we're interacting with our families. Yeah. That there's going to be moments where speaking, for example, to your parents, it's not actually the best idea. It's better for you to get someone else to speak to them. Yeah, or you want to engage with your children. Get somebody who you were a teenager and you want to help them. It's a problematic. Get somebody else of their age group, or someone who's younger who they respect and look up to, rather than you yourself, which they're not going to listen to. Yeah, so there's times we have to know when to speak, as well as knowing how to speak. These are all context of the Tahir of Allah. Okay, so if we continue on then, so we're learning now about this topic of tazkir. So he says, if you look at the top of page 20 in this book, he's talking about the tazkir, reminding people. So he says, من هنا كان للكلام أقوى الأثر وأعظم الخبر في استقامة السير. Yeah, so he's talking about speech. He says speech has the greatest impact, yeah, in us becoming upright on the path, in us following the path. And in purifying our internal soul, our internal conscience. Yeah? And in cleaning or elevating our internal secret. And illuminating our inner sight. And purifying ourselves from foulness. وكان في اعوجاج هذا اللسان أكبر الأثر في ترادف الظلمات وتواكب الجيوش الغفلات والتوسيع وتكثيف الحجب إلى غير ذلك من المكاره الظاهرة والباطنة. So at the same time, the tongue is the biggest way for us to become destroyed as well. Yeah, so it's the biggest means by which we can become crooked on the path. It has the biggest impact for bringing successive darknesses to us. Yeah, for a possession of heedlessness. Yeah. And for the veils between us and God to be thickened. So look at the power here, the power of the tongue. The tongue is the best way to bring us to Allah. It's the best way to keep us upright on the path to Allah. But it's also the greatest destruction as well. This is why we have to engage more intelligently with the tongue. Like many of the scholars say, what's the biggest reason for our crisis right now? Is because we don't speak. Because people don't command to good and forbid what's evil anymore. People don't speak, they don't tell their families, they don't tell their communities, this is what this is the right thing to do in this situation. We don't speak, and therefore people just become lazy. The silent majority, they call them. Most people are just silent, and therefore people end up thinking that, okay, Islam is like what this person said, this one individual who might have an extreme view or might have a strange or unusual view. Yeah. So really it's about that. It's about us doing that. But at the same time, we recognize the power of speech. Yeah. Why was the tongue created? The tongue was created, they say, for 6 reasons. Imam Haddad brings 6 reasons in his book of assistance. Yeah. He says, these are the 6 reasons. Khalas, there's nothing else. The first reason that's mentioned from amongst the first reasons is the Vicar of Allah. To remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remember God, yeah? To reconnect us back to the previous realm where we were souls in the divine presence, in love with the divine, to connect us back to that realm, we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for the dhikr. Number 2, recitation of the Quran, yeah, which is the greatest dhikr, aslan, and it's this is what Allah descended upon creation. Allah caused it to be sent down upon all of us. This is the Quran. So to recite the Quran. Yeah. Number 3, the third reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed us to speak is to teach knowledge, to teach people the rules of Islam, to teach people about the spiritual aspects of Islam, to teach people about what they should believe, to teach people about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to teach people beneficial, elevatory knowledge that elevates, knowledge that increases you in iman, increases you in goodness, increases you in ihsan, in your spiritual state with Allah. Yeah. The 4th reason why we speak, the 4th reason is nasiha, from amongst the most important reasons. It's in order to advise other people of what they should be doing, helping them in their context. And that can be very informal or formal. We have formal counselors, we call them counselors. But the Prophet ﷺ was the greatest counselor. He was the nasih. And he said, ad-dinu nasiha, that all of religion is counsel, is sincere counsel. So our interactions, we are giving good, positive advice to people, depositing within them what they need at that time. So people come to us in different states, different situations, and we give advice. And this advice, of course, has to be contextualized. We've got to give advice that people aren't going to get upset by. So one of the things, like they mentioned, a beautiful story that really illustrates this point well, which is a story about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. Yeah, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein as youths, radiyallahu anhuma wa radahuma. Yeah, as youth, 2 young men, they looked upon an old man. They were walking, they saw an old man who was making wudu, and he wasn't making wudu properly. Yeah, he was making wudu in an incorrect way. He was actually making mistakes. Now, so what do we do now? Yeah, we've got to advise this person. We can't just leave it. What we would do is we would leave it, and that's where the faithfulness comes from now in the ummah, is because we just leave things. We don't leave them, but we advise them in a beautiful way. So what do? Subhanallah, they go to this old man and they say to him, Ya Sheikh, you're older than us, you're our superior, our senior. We just want to ask you something. Can you teach us? Yeah, can you teach us how to make wudu? These are the grandsons of the Prophet ﷺ, the sons of Fatima Zahra al-Batul, yeah, of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib. And look at the humility. And they say, can you teach us, as if they weren't taught how to make wudu? Yeah, can you teach us how to make wudu? After they said, can you check our wudu? It's even more humble. They're saying, listen, we make wudu, but we don't know if it's right or not. Yeah, can you check our wudu? Are we doing wudu right? So Imam Hassan comes first. He makes wudu, and it's like poetry in motion. He makes this beautiful wudu, because wudu is a really beautiful act. They say that if you want to see secrets of the awliya, see the way they make wudu. They used to say about Murabbat al-Hajj, rahmatullah, he was passed away, that he would spend about 5 minutes making wudu, and he was absolutely perfect, pristine, precise wudu. Yeah, so then Imam Hassan makes wudu, perfect wudu. Then Imam Hussein makes wudu, perfect wudu. Now the old man realizes, I'm doing it wrong, because they both done it exactly the same way, and it was exactly perfect. And then he realized, I've done it wrong. This is how you give advice. So now this man, subhanAllah, I'm doing wudu wrong. Thank you so much for telling me. Have they upset him? No. Have they challenged him? No. Have they even confronted him? Have they even said anything that you've done something wrong? Have they even spoken? No. They've just shown by example that this is the way to do things. Yeah, so this is nasiha, yeah, and adina nasiha. We need to become people of nasiha as much as we possibly can. The fifth reason why we speak is da'wah ila Allah. Yeah, the topic we're talking about is calling people to Allah. Yeah, and this is very broad. For example, relationship building. The essence of da'wah, the foundation of da'wah is relationships. Adinu mu'amala. Yeah, the religion is transaction, relation. Now, to have a relationship with somebody else, it means you've got to talk about different things. Yeah, so you could be talking about football with somebody. You could be talking about the mundane. Your intention is lofty, so you're using your tongue for the right reason. That is to bring people closer to the religion of Islam. Yeah, or whatever, I'm just giving. You could be talking about a wide variety of matters. Yeah, which is fine, so long as it's mubah, then we should be discussing these things in order to bring people closer to the religion. Yeah, so this is very like they mentioned one of our teachers from Scotland, Sheikh Abdulaziz Frederick. He mentions once that one of his students, he had this individual who's calling him to Islam. He had this young man who was calling him to Islam, and he was really sort of, speaking to him for a lot. And then he invited him once to the house of Sheikh Abdulaziz, and they sat down and they had a chat. And then halfway through the chat, Sheikh Abdulaziz gets a phone call, and the phone call is like from one of his students saying that, somebody who he knew needed like a book from him. They needed something, and they needed it quite urgently. Now, Sheikh Abdulaziz said that he was in a dilemma. He's got a guest, and then he needs to also do this. These are both necessary. So he says to his student, he tells his student, the student who was calling this young man to Islam, this same student, he tells him, he says, I want you to go and deliver this book. Yeah, go and deliver this book. He says, yeah, of course, that's not, but he goes and delivers the book. He comes back again, and his friend's taken the Shahada. Just like that, within 5-10 minutes. He's like, I've been talking to this guy for 5-10 months, or however long it's been. So then he asked Sheikh Abdulaziz after, he goes, what happened? What did he talk about? And he goes, we talked about, like Rangers Celtic. We're talking about the rivalry between Rangers and Celtic, football rivalry. And he said, literally, he goes, I spoke to him, and then in and amongst us, he embedded message. So they were talking, and he was like, what do you believe in God? Yeah, I believe in God, yeah. And then they carried on this informal conversation. What do you think about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Yeah, he was a prophet, he was truthful. Yeah, khalas, like this. So this is an example there. They're talking about something seemingly mundane, but the intentions are lofty and the objectives are being achieved. which is to bring people in. So this is da'wah. And then the sixth reason why we speak is just general, like for example, can you pass me that cup? Yeah, things like that. Anything that we have a need for. So these are the 6 reasons why the tongue was created and where we can have a powerful positive impact. Yeah, Vicar of Allah impacts the heart, impacts our souls. The recitation of the Quran, yeah, one of the most fundamental pillars of Islam and of spirituality. Then number 3 is to teach knowledge to other people, which is the concern of the prophets, alayhimussalam. To the extent that if you establish a gathering of knowledge, the angels come and surround it, and they surround it all the way up to the Arsh of Allah. The angelic presence for establishing a circle of knowledge, even just you and someone else, even just you alone, is mashallah, is absolutely immense. Yeah, so to establish circles of knowledge, this is one of the things that we should be doing in our households. If we're serious about rectifying our own nature, we need to take our time and to teach. So for example, if we've learned something, maybe we've studied at a course somewhere, or we've learned something, we teach that. Or if we can't do that, then we read through a book. For example, read through a book on the Shama'il, on the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like our Master Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by Imam Sirajuddin al-Husayni, the perfect man by Imam Muhammad al-Maliki, al-Alawi al-Maliki. Or we read like a book like for example Qasas al-Nabi, and stories of the prophets, stories of the Sahaba, something like this. Or Riyadh al-Salihin, we establish a circle of knowledge within our family setting. What's amazing is you look at all of these great callers who are very, very busy with their lives. All of them have this aspect. Look at Habib Umar bin Hafiz, like an unbelievable, very, very busy person, extremely busy person. That his responsibilities are immense. Yet every single day, look at his routine. He comes, he teaches his post-Fajr class, which is like on TV, it's like a big class. Then he goes back home. What does he do when he goes back home? He has an hour he teaches his daughters. Yeah, his blessed daughters. Then the next hour, he teaches his granddaughters. Yeah, so he's establishing circles of knowledge within his family and teaching his family. Personally taking on, he couldn't hire a teacher. Yeah, I'm sure there's thousands of female teachers who would happily teach his daughters and his granddaughters, of course. But he is taking on himself, he's leading by example. Yeah, so we establish these circles within us. So the circles of knowledge, then of course, nasiha, advice, da'wah, and then if we have a need. So these are the reasons why we use the tongue. We need to avoid using the tongue for wrong reasons. So if you want to understand this, again, this time there's 4. They mention, Imam al-Ghazali mentions 20 sins of the tongue in the Ihya. But what they say is if you have these 4, then all the others are taken care of. If you can avoid 4 things. Number 1, avoiding lying. Yeah, that we don't ever lie about anything. We don't ever lie. Number 2, we avoid backbiting, talking about other people. Yeah, backbiting is when we talk about others in a way that they would not like it if they heard it. They would dislike it if they heard it. Yeah. So backbiting is something, it's a major sin, and it actually destroys deeds. Yeah, it destroys your deeds. Yeah, so we avoid that. Number 3, argumentation, arguing over anything, religious or non-religious, yeah, is problematic and a waste of time. A waste of time at best, at worst is sinful. Yeah, and then the 4th one is to talk about things that have nothing to do with us. Yeah, so if we can avoid lying, we can avoid backbiting, we can avoid arguing, and we can avoid talking about things that have nothing to do with us, we will be able to put this in chains. And if you can control the tongue, you're from the greatest people on the face of the planet. This is what they say. Some of our teachers that say that there's a very, very small number of people that can control this tongue. Very, very small number of people. Yeah, so the ability to control the tongue is something tremendous, and we should set up things. Now, one of the things that some of the teachers mention is you have like a box in your house, and anytime you say something you shouldn't have said, you put £1 in it, or you put £5 in it if you really want to chain the tongue in. So anytime you lie, even if it was accidental, even you were joking and you told a lie, you put £5 in it. Anytime you backbite somebody else, you say something bad about someone else, you put £5 in it. Anytime you argue, anytime you say something of no concern, you put money in it. And then if you start doing that, eventually the pain is going to come through. You can, I'm losing a lot of money here. Yeah, so I'm not gonna carry on doing this, and I'm gonna try to refine. Okay, so this is what he's mentioned, and we've talked a bit about the tongue. So now the next question then is, we want to obviously speak to people and we want our words to be impactful. This is what he's talked about. The words have an impact. So how can we make our words more impactful? This is the question now. How can we make our words stronger? And there's a few key points here, 3 key points that we want to mention. The first one is tayyib food. Yeah. If we want to become people whose words are impactful, our food has to become not just halal but pure. It has to be purified food. The first conversation that we're going to have is with Allah, isn't it? If you want to make our words impactful, we have a conversation with Allah. We ask Allah to give us the ability to impact other people and to raise them, whoever they might be. Like we said, whether they're our family, whether they're our wider community, yeah, whether they're our own children, whether they're other people's children, whether they're our parents, other people's parents, our brothers and sisters, other people's brothers and sisters, our neighbors, other people's neighbors, yeah, whatever it might be, we seeking to do this. So we have to tayyib food, and then we call upon Allah. We know this, and we look at it's a really beautiful narration, one of the most important narrations from a perspective that the Prophet ﷺ came with is from Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, obviously one of the 10 guaranteed paradise, an individual who built cities, literally Basra and Kufa and all these cities you hear about, they were built by Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, one of the greatest of the companions, a man of absolutely immense stature. Yeah. One of his things, just as an aside, one of his secrets about teaching, someone asked him about children, and he said that the izzah, the dignity and the honor and the elevation of our children is in the stories of the Rasul. How do we elevate our children? How do we strengthen them? How do we bring them to lofty ranks? We bring them to lofty ranks through the stories. This is the izzah, this is their dignity, this is their honor. The stories of the Sahaba, the stories of the Rasul specifically, he mentioned. Yeah, just as an aside. But what does Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, why are we mentioning him? He asks a very important question. So he asks the Prophet ﷺ, how can I make my dua mustajab? How can I make my dua accepted? How can I make sure Allah accepts my dua? What a question. This is like, the holy grail. Yeah, this is a golden question we all want to know. How can I make my dua mustajab? Prophet ﷺ says these important words. He says, make your food tayyib, make your food pure, and Allah will accept your dua. The proof of this, Sayyidina Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, after that point onwards, he becomes known for someone who's mustajab. His dua is mustajab, his dua is mustajab, his dua is mustajab. It's always, he's calling upon Allah, he's being accepted. Yeah, so the proof is right there. The proof is in the pudding, as they say. Yeah, he does this, and mashallah, his dua. So that's the first stage. If you want to do that, and really, inshallah, as people, our teachers, the last of Sheikh Ibrahim, Hafidhullah, speak about this. We need to take control of our food source. That's a start, isn't it? We just start growing. Look at Imam al-Haddad. Imam al-Haddad, this great Imam who's still bringing people into Islam 300 years after he's passed away. He never ate a single morsel of food except that was from his land, and that he had grown it, and he knew exactly it was his land, his food. He's been through the whole process of that food, and then he puts it in his blessed mouth. If you don't do this, we're really capping our spiritual potential. There's only so far we can go spiritually with Allah if there's problems with our food. That's just a fact. That's just a fact. Yeah. So we need to first and foremost become people of tayyib food. This is going to allow us to become more impactful in our speech. This is the first primary point. The second point then is that we need to embody what we teach and speak about. Yeah. So in essence, we all actually teachers. Yeah, we're all actually teachers throughout our whole lives. We're teaching through our embodiment or lack thereof. That Sheikh Umar bin Hussein al-Khatibi said that we are all giving our messages to the whole world around us. Just by the way we are, we're giving out messages all the time. Not just when we speak, but we're giving our messages the way we walk, the way we carry ourselves, even like our micro movements. Yeah, these are all giving our messages to people and letting them know about what we are and who we are. Yeah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Innama bu'ithtu mu'allima," I was only sent as a teacher, which shows he was teaching his whole life. So every single engagement that he had with anybody was teaching. Yeah. So we have to become an embodiment. This is particularly important for parents. The most effective, in fact, the only effective form of parenting, is to parent through example. Khalas, that's it. Why? Because children are very, very sharp. They smell hypocrisy like the way we smell a nice meal, a nice curry that's around the corner. Yeah, they smell hypocrisy very quickly. Oh, dad's telling me to read, but he's watching the TV. Yeah, dad's telling me to learn my Quran. How much hifz has he done? These are the questions. Children are ruthless in that regard, mashallah. Yeah, so they'll pick up on it. So you have to lead. That's the only effective form of parenting. Yeah, and that's also the same thing applies for a wider community as well. Yeah, we need to become people of embodiment. I mean, there's no point in Tahir calling people to the Hajjud, Tahir people calling people to reading the Quran, Tahir calling people to this and the other, and he's not doing it himself. What's the point of that? It's not going to impact anybody. Yeah, if you're going to talk about da'wah and then you're very, very lazy in your own da'wah efforts, it's not going to impact anybody. Yeah. So this is, and then the final one, the third one that we're going to mention today is that we have to work hard on improving our intentions. Yeah, we have to work on our intentions, on our sincerity. Yeah, and we do this through analyzing our intentions, making sure they're sincere, and asking Allah for assistance. Yeah. So they mentioned in terms of da'wah, there's 5 intentions we should focus on. And we should be constantly repeating these intentions within us. So I'll mention these 5 and then we'll stop. I'll continue on with this point next lesson because it's a very important point. The first intention is that we want to emulate the way of the prophets themselves. Yeah, that the prophets guided people to humanity and we want to do the same. Yeah, we want to do the same job that the prophets had. That's our intention. We make that intention before we start any kind of da'wah work. Secondly, we are following the commandments in the Quran. The Quran tells us to learn and then teach others and benefit others. Yeah. Thirdly, we want to use all of the gifts Allah has given us to benefit humanity. Yeah. The most beneficial of people, the best of people are those who benefit others the most. Yeah. So we want to become people that use whatever Allah has given us, whatever gifts that might be to benefit humanity. Number 4, we want to preserve the Sharia, the sacred law of Allah. And number 5, we want to rectify ourselves. We want to change ourselves before we change anyone else. These are our 5 golden intentions. And these intentions are mentioned at the start and we should be aware of them. One of the things we asked Habib Qadim Saqaf in Tarim, that the Faqir asked him that we sit in a lot of durus, we sit in a lot of lessons. How do we maintain our intention in lessons? And he said in a very matter of fact sort of way, he said, just record the intentions you made. You've made intentions at the start of your class, haven't you? Yes, I have. Just recall them throughout your class. Recall them throughout your day. Record them throughout your engagement with others. This is how we do it, inshallah. Okay, we'll stop there. So next time we'll continue on. We'll look at some more aspects of intention, how to purify and how to bring presence into our lives through intention. And we look at some further examples from the seerah and also from the Sahaba as well of intention and also of true calling to Allah. Inshallah ta'ala, if there's any questions or any comments, then inshallah we're open to that. People can type in questions in the chat or they can unmute their microphone and ask as well, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustadh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
So, Ustadh, you mentioned about commanding good and forbidding evil and how it's not very common nowadays, and especially with family and things like that. What are the common barriers that prevent people from doing this act of commanding good and forbidding evil?
Okay, very good question. Yeah, essential question. What the ulama tell us, the fundamental reason is due to a weakness of iman. So that weakness of iman now makes us afraid. Weakness of faith and weakness of our connection with Allah. That then makes us afraid to want to speak out because we're scared. We're more worried about what people are going to think. So we're scared. How's he going to react? How's she going to react? What's she going to think? What's he going to think about what I'm saying? Rather than what's Allah going to think about my failure to do this. That's one reason. Another second reason is just a lack of sort of what we can say is awareness of these issues. Yeah, it's upon us to wake up. Really, I mean, the silent majority is what does all the damage. Because we stay quiet, we don't do anything, we're not active, then other people, we then giving them the space. We often say, you come in and you give your thoughts because you're actually going to say something. We're just going to sit here and be quiet. Yeah, so I think the lack of iman, and then also a lack of awareness that this is actually an obligation to call with wisdom, of course. That doesn't mean that we're going to go around, you know, telling people off. The opposite, actually. The opposite. If we look at the way to do it, of course, it does require knowledge as well. There's all prerequisites to it. For example, if you're going to call someone and that's going to lead to a greater fitna, then we don't do it and things like that. So there is things that need to be learned. And inshallah is something that we can look at in the next lesson. What are the rules of calling to command and calling to go to forbidding evil? But really, the vast majority of situations, it's fine for us to do it, but we're not doing it due to a lack of iman or a lack of awareness. Is there anyone else? Okay, please talk about sincerity and how to achieve it and maintain it, inshallah. Tomorrow is fine. Yeah, okay, inshallah ta'ala. I mean, I'll just very briefly mention something. We'll go into more details. Sincerity, ikhlas, they say, is when your qasd, your direction and your focus is wholeheartedly towards Allah. The best way to understand it is actually when we look at the opposite, the other sides of it. So for example, what else do people turn towards? We turn towards creation. We turn towards our own nafs. We turn towards all these other things. So it's about keeping your focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's techniques and there's ways to do that. There's ways to achieve this sincerity. So we flesh it out in a lot more detail, but that's the essence of it, is to just have a wholehearted focus upon Allah. You have to see Allah in everything that you do, to be focused and to recognize that Allah is the one who you're doing everything for, inshallah. Okay, Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for the questions, inshallah. And we open, inshallah, it's really appreciate the interaction, to be honest. It's better. I personally think that it's a better way to actually teach and for people to benefit. Because then we can be more specific and give what people want from a session like this, inshallah. So Jazakumullah khair, inshallah. We'll continue on and we'll look more at these topics of sincerity and also intention as well, inshallah. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.